Good evening. My name is Barbara Kappos, and I'm the Executive Director of the East Los Angeles Women's Center. Thank you for joining us tonight. When we usually have a Café Con event, we share a space where we drink coffee, maybe have a glass of wine, and enjoy delicious refreshments and indulge in thought-provoking conversations. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, this is not the case tonight, but we wanted to bring back some normalcy, even if it's virtual, and stay connected to all of you and bring forward an issue that devastated this community. We are honored to have with us tonight the director, the producer, and the actor of the short film For Rosa, and joining us, our own co-founder, who will share with you her experience as a social worker in the aftermath of this tragedy at LAC USC. You will have an opportunity to meet with them after the screening of the film. There has been a long history of subjecting marginalized women to forced and coerced sterilizations. In recent years, the practice has been documented in countries in North and South America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. It has targeted women who are ethnic and racial minorities, indigenous women, women with disabilities, women living with HIV, and women living in poverty. More than 20,000 Californians were forcibly sterilized between 1909 and 1963. Between 1968 and 1974, in this community, more than 200 women, primarily Latinas, who were monolingual Spanish speakers, were subjected to forced sterilization after delivering their babies at LAC USC. Their voices were silenced until 10 women came together, known as the Madrigal Ten, filed a lawsuit championed by Antonia Hernandez, alleging that medical personnel systemically coerced Mexican-American women in submitting to sterilization. However, the judge sided with the county hospital, citing that the doctors had the interests of the patients in mind when deciding to pursue these procedures, and that the doctors did not do anything wrong. In 2018, the LA County Board of Supervisors publicly apologized to more than 200 women who were coerced in the sterilization, and urged support of a bill that would pay reparations. The bill, SB 1190, was passed and it established the eugenic sterilization compensation program, providing victim compensation to any survivor of a state-sponsored sterilization conducted pursuant to the eugenics law that existed in the state of California between 1909 and 1979. We decided to highlight this film tonight because the Women and Children's Hospital will be demolished this fall. However, we must never forget the impact it had on the women, on their families, and on this community. Recognizing that the forced and coerced sterilization of women is fundamentally a violation of human rights, and that we commit ourselves to protect women's reproductive freedom worldwide. In a moment, we will hear from Supervisor Hilda Solis, who has been instrumental in rebuilding a brave new space, which will be the Restorative Care Village at LAC USC. I personally want to thank Supervisor Solis for her incredible courage, her vision, and her leadership, and helping us move towards a more just society. I hope you will stay with us for the screening of the film and the Q&A to follow. And again, I thank you for joining us. And now a message from Supervisor Solis. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Los Angeles County Supervisor Hilda L. Solis from the 1st District. I'd like to start off by acknowledging Barbara Kappos and East Los Angeles Women's Center for hosting this event. I also want to acknowledge Director Kathryn Boyd-Batstone and Executive Producer Chewie Martinez and actor Melinna Bobadilla. Although it can be painful, it is necessary to shed light on the tragedies from our past. As tonight's event discusses, At LAC USC in the 1960s and 70s, hundreds of women, most of whom were Mexican immigrants who did not speak English and were from low-income families, were misled and forced to be sterilized. These coercive sterilization practices were driven by racism, sexism, ignorance, and a sense of superiority by some over other groups of people. The physical and emotional harm to the women, their families, and the community cannot be undone. This is a dark period of California and Los Angeles County's history. Throughout the 1900s, California had one of the most active sterilization programs in the nation, and this disproportionately impacted Latinas, who were 59% more likely to be sterilized than other women. This is now recognized as a major human rights abuse, and it is inexcusable that the Los Angeles County participated in this abuse. We owe a heartfelt apology to the women and their families who endured this trauma, and a thank you to the brave Latina women who spoke out to stop this practice. We as a society often need to be reminded of the past so that we don't make the same mistakes in the future. That is why I want to share with you what will come of the Women and Children's Hospital where these forced sterilizations occurred in honor of the survivors. There will be a memorial that will forever remind all of us about the injustices that took place in our backyard. Deep engagement of community will be a key piece to this artwork. On the site of LAC USC at my direction, Los Angeles County is also creating a healthy and economically resilient community, what we call the Healthy Village. The Restorative Care Village, as it is known, would be the nation's first mental health and well-being village dedicated to providing a continuum of care for those that are most vulnerable. The village will provide recuperative care, housing, jobs, and wraparound services, and necessary tools to provide our residents with what they need to successfully integrate back into the community. We've already invested over $110 million to construct this initiative. Later this year, we will begin the second phase of this restorative care village, which will be on the site of where the Women and Girls Hospital currently sits. We will include 200 subacute psychiatric beds, a recovery center, and an outpatient center, and a mental health urgent care facility. This is the future of a site marked by pain, but one now that will be filled with hope and community. I hope you will visit my website, HildaLSolis.org, to learn more about the Restorative Care Village, and that forever in your hearts you remember what can happen right in our communities. So please continue standing up for each other and making these important films. It's necessary not to repeat the past and to ensure a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Solis, for taking the time to update us on these upcoming events and for always being a champion for the community. Hello, everybody. Hola todos. My name is Heidi Rodriguez, and I am the Development Manager at East Los Angeles Women's Center. And today I want to welcome you to our first ever virtual Café Con. So I would say that you're part of history in the making today. This is a new feat for us, and we're honored that you chose us today on this fine Thursday evening. After a long day of work, and you could have had so many other things to do, and you chose to be here today. And for that, we are grateful, and we're honored that this moment, and we will be able to also honor the past, like Supervisor Solis said as well. Special thanks to our speakers who will join us after the film. We hope that you are able to stay with us throughout so you can listen to this great discussion that will take place between community members, creators, creatives, and community influencers as well. I also want to go over some housekeeping. Please let us know how you're feeling, where you're joining us from. If you're logged on to YouTube, make sure to leave us a comment in the comments section. And whatever you're feeling today, share with us through emojis. We want to know. And for the Q&A portion, you can also use the comments section to ask questions to the actors and to Connie Destito, who is the co-founder of East Los Angeles Women's Center. And if you feel moved to share this experience on our social media, please do so at ELAWC. Share what you can share on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and let us know also through there how you're feeling. I would like to introduce our panelists so that we can all get acquainted with them. Today we have Connie Destito, LCSW. She is a former clinical social worker at the Women's and Children's Hospital from 1975 to 1981. She is also the co-founder of the East Los Angeles Rape Crisis Hotline, which later became the East Los Angeles Women's Center that we know today. And it's the first bilingual hotline in the state of California. She's now the dean at Pacific Oaks College in the Latina Family Studies program. So welcome, Connie. We also have in our panel Kathryn Boyd-Batstone, who is the director and the writer of For Rosa. She is a director and cinematographer of narrative and documentary films. She is a USC School of Cinematic Arts MFA graduate. Congratulations, with a master's degree in cinematography and directing. She's also the former video producer at We Are Me Too, and her work has been featured on CNN and many other platforms for photojournalism. So welcome, Kathryn. We also have Chewie Martinez, the producer of For Rosa. He's a homegrown talent here in East LA. Chewie is the founder of Chumongous Productions, and he's the former on-air talent on Kiss FM and an actor, among many other accolades. We also have, lastly, but certainly not least, Melinna Bobadilla, actor and co-producer. She is the amazing Rosa on the film. She is a Chicana actress and producer known for Orange is the New Black, The Laundromat, and Little America, just to name a few. Melinna holds a dual Bachelor of Arts in Ethnic Studies and Mass Communications from UC Berkeley, and a master's degree in Theater and Education from New York University. Welcome, Melinna.
Having me.
And so to start off the conversation, we're going to have Connie. Now that we're acquainted with our guests and our panelists, I want to welcome Connie to the floor. And we want to know, Connie, please share your experience at LA County USC Hospital as a Latina social worker during these very trying times for the community. Can you tell us a little more of what that experience was like?
Yes. First of all, let me acknowledge all of those brave women who were able to come forth at that time. At that time was extremely difficult, even as we find it now after, 50 years, which is beyond my imagination now. But in appreciation for their courage, who I believe as a social worker for me, when I entered the system, I was at Women's Hospital. I was hired by one of the best Latina social work directors that was our bridge before from the 70s into 1975 and beyond, who was able to bring in a lot more Latina Spanish-speaking social workers to serve our community. I was fresh out of graduate school, out of UCLA, heard about Dolores, really wanted to work for women and Latina women. And she was right there ready to offer guidance and support for those of us coming in. I was very naive at the time when I came in 1975 about what was going on at the county hospital. But we were soon I was able to learn that the work that I was doing now was in transition from what had been going on earlier at Women's Hospital. I was involved in the emergency room where I saw Latina all rape victims, sexual assault victims at the time. I was involved in the Planned Parenthood aspect of it for women who were pregnant, and we're really reevaluating what that meant for them, but for Spanish-speaking women. So we were organizing groups, Spanish-speaking groups for them to evaluate what it was, how to make a decision about being in control of their lives, if this was a pregnancy they wanted. They came to our groups not because somebody was pushing them to come to our groups, but as being invited, as looking at pregnancy as something to celebrate and consider at this time in your life. There were forums done in Spanish. There were groups amongst Latina women who really created the dynamics of their own group to support each other. And these were pregnant women, or women actually, some of them were considering abortions. That was a time when abortions were introduced and were very much a part of the larger system. So women were given that option. But at that time, when I was there, they had to sign forms. We had all our forms in Spanish. They had to participate in the group and be a part of understanding all of what's involved in any decision they made along the pregnancy spectrum for them. And then they had 3 days, whatever they decided, to change their minds and not do anything. If they chose an abortion, they had 3 days they were not allowed to have an abortion. They had to wait 3 days, in other words. They were also informed about, we worked closely with Planned Parenthood, and we're discussing what Planned Parenthood meant for Latina women and Spanish-speaking women. Most of the women in our groups, in my groups and a colleague, were immigrant women, very recently here, very much finding out about the services from their comadres in the community and where to go to Women's Hospital. So I believe I was there at a time of transition under a great leader of Dolores Rodriguez, who encouraged us, young social workers, to speak up, to stand and be actively involved in protecting our clients. And in fact, through her mentoring and working at Women's Hospital, we were able to develop eventually from our East LA rape hotline, which is now East LA Women's Center. Those were very, very trying times. At the time, we were getting a number of women who were being sexually assaulted coming in for services in the emergency room where I worked, which I was expected, and was part of my responsibility was being with the client while they were being seen by the doctor and the nurse. So I was there through the entire examination, explaining everything they were going through, what was involved, what kind of examination they were going to have, and taking it step by step, then offering them services, any follow-up services. Many of our patients did not want their family to know. It was horribly, horribly devastating for them. And they didn't have anybody else to talk to other than what we were offering there. And that's what led to working with another colleague in the community to develop the East LA Women's Center, which was developed in 1975 as a call to all women in our community to volunteer and have women helping other women in need. And as many of you know, it's now in its 45th year, which is amazing to me. But it's not, because it's always been women working for other women. So it's evolved through the years through passionate, dynamic, strong Latina women and others who've supported us to turn it into the program serving in so many different ways the needs of our Latino community, which continues by you being present today and reliving the history with us back in those years when it was extremely difficult to have a voice. Now our voices cannot be silent. So I appreciate being here. I'm honored for all of you in the audience to take the time to invest your time into this important history, and also with our filmmakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Connie. That's very important framework for all of us to understand everything that you and so many other women paved the way for it to be what it is now. So now we want to open up the floor to the creatives. And I'm going to ask an open-ended question for all three of you to answer, and it's up to you who wants. It's like a popcorn question. Whoever wants to answer first. So this is for all three. Can you please tell us what your experience was in producing and creating and writing this film, and your overall message to the community? What was your message at the moment of creating this film? So I open up the floor.
Ladies first. I'm gonna keep quiet. I'm gonna keep real quiet. I'll let y'all go first.
Maybe Melinna, I can talk about just writing it, and then if you want to talk about your whole experience. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming to watch this. It's I'm just really grateful to be able to share this experience. And yeah, I grew up in Long Beach, and I learned about this when I was actually living in Texas at a film festival. I saw the documentary No Más Bebés, and it just struck me that I hadn't heard about this history, and I was just, again, so in awe of just the strength that it must have taken these women to stand up. And I think that we need to see this history and understand it and see these stories of resiliency. And so hopefully it feels like a way to honor the immense amount of strength that it took. So that was kind of my goal in writing it. Yeah, Melinna, I'd love to hear about your experience too.
Yeah, so my entry point in this really is, I like to start. I've been doing a lot of Zooms lately, not just for the film, but just in the past few months for other acting work, and then for just other speaking gigs. And I think it's always really important to start with your own positionality, right? Like, what is your background and your path and everything that's led up to this particular moment that has shaped your identity? So I'm a Chicana. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, but I'm the daughter of immigrants from Mexico. And when my parents first came from Mexico, they settled around East LA. My dad's family lived in different parts of Lincoln Heights, and my mother's family actually grew up right across the street from Hazard Park. So she was, a 5-minute walk from where this trauma took place. And when they first came here, it was in the 60s and 70s, and everyone was born in Mexico except my youngest aunt. So that story very much could have been them had they actually gone to the hospital that was across the street from them. But I come to this as an actor, as a Chicana, as a brown Chicana, a brown Latina, and someone who, prior to getting into acting, studied ethnic studies and Chicano studies. And even with having done that, this very dark, very painful, traumatic moment in Chicana Latina history was something that I hadn't really learned in depth about, which I found troubling, because this happened down the street. This happened in Los Angeles. This is LA history. This is US history. This can be taught in gender studies. Obviously, this is learned by medical students. But I think what really interested me in telling the story was that this narrative really is at that intersection of so many different entry points to start talking about social justice issues and equity, because yes, this happened to Latinas. And when we're talking about reproductive justice, which is a conversation that has taken many shapes throughout the decades, especially post Roe v. Wade. But when we talk about reproductive justice, oftentimes we lead with the question of whether or not someone should be allowed to have an abortion. Absolutely, they should. That's coming from Melinna as an individual. But it also challenged me as someone who is very pro-choice and who believes someone should be able to have an abortion, no questions asked, period, without any justifications or guilt. It challenged me to kind of think about reproductive justice from this other end, right? Like, it is not only about choosing to end a pregnancy or to prevent a pregnancy, but also it's about preserving the autonomy and the freedom for someone who wants to become pregnant and perhaps wants to have multiple children. Ultimately, it's about having autonomy over your own body. And I think reproductive justice looks very different when the site of that justice is the body of a brown, indigenous, a Black woman of color. And so I think for me, this was more than an acting gig. It was really kind of an exploration of that. And I hope that in continuing to tell this story, we can kind of reopen this chapter in history that I think was closed and tucked away all too quickly. So that's where I'm at. I hope we can continue sharing the story and ultimately continue shedding light on the experiences and the trauma that these women faced.
Chuey, do you have some words?
I do. Wow. How do I follow that? Hi, my name is Chewie Martinez, executive producer for Rosa. Growing up in East LA, being in Lincoln Heights, being in the SGV and Boyle Heights, running around, being a travieso when I was growing up. I just wanted to dedicate this project to the women in my family, because it was my great grandmother and my abuelita and my mom who told me about the Madrigal Ten in my teen years. And the women in my family are lit, and they put me onto this story, and talk about like a full circle moment when I was presented with this project by my fellow producer Ashley, and she said, I'm gonna send you the scripts. We really want you to be a part of this, and it's about the Madrigal Ten. And once I heard that, I was just like, whoa, the Madrigal Ten, like, yo, I know about this. I know what happened. So read the script, and I was in. I was in from the get, because I just feel it's important to shed light and amplify these stories. I think a lot of times when it deals with stories of people of color and the poor and the disenfranchised, it's an afterthought, especially when it comes to Hollywood and the stories they want to tell. I think that it was a tremendous honor for me to be involved in this project. And if my contribution to pushing the movement and our voices forward, if it's me, amplifying these stories, I'm going to be a part of that till the day I die. I made a promise to my mother that, when I have the means and the power to, shed light on our stories and, change perceptions of our people, I was going to be involved, and I'm going to be involved. And that's kind of the whole foundation of my production company, giving voice to, Latinos, Latinas, African Americans, the LGBTQ folks. Like, this is a movement, and I think we're living in different times, and it's a revolution. And I think these kinds of stories need to be told. And arriba la raza y arriba los Latinos, and I'm all for that. So it's a tremendous honor to be here, and just thank you guys for having this screening, and I'm just honored to be here.
Thank you for that, Chuey. I just want to snap my fingers. So wherever you are, that's just the revolution, that let's bring that energy into the space, of telling those stories and making sure that this doesn't happen again. I'm going to ask one more question, but I want to open it up to everyone that is in the chat section. Please, 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 this is your time to ask away, comments, questions, whatever's on your mind, on your heart. Let us know what you're thinking in solidarity. What do you want to know? This is your chance. Everyone's here in the room at the same time, virtually. So let us know what is on your mind. So before you guys all flood us with your questions, I have one more for Melinna, or also for you, Chuey or Kathryn. But what was the process like? Did you all get to talk to any firsthand experience, anyone from the Madrigal 10 that was involved in this? And what was that like? Was that part of your creative process as well?
So I didn't actually get to meet any one of the women who were part of the Madrigal 10, but thanks to Kat, I did get to really delve in deep and spend some time watching multiple times the beautiful documentary No Más Bebés. And I think that they did such an amazing job, and they were really so respectful and so really careful with not re-traumatizing. I think when we tell a story like this, and when the survivors of a trauma like this are still present, I think it's important to look at how we take those stories and we amplify them, and always in the name of dignity and justice, but not to re-traumatize or to exploit. And I think the documentary did a beautiful job of that. And so for me, it was really a treat as an actor to have that as a source, as really the crux of my research, because the filmmakers, they themselves reached out and cultivated relationships and trust and stepped back. I know there were some people that weren't ready to talk. There were some YouTube videos that were filmed at some Q&As and panels connected to the documentary that I also researched on my own. And so there's some ancillary information that I learned from that. But I know that they were really respectful and kind of gave space to the people that didn't want to reopen that chapter in their history, didn't want to revisit that pain. And the people that were ready to talk about, they treaded lightly. And so I was able to learn about this experience through the perspective of a few different women. I want to say, I don't know, maybe around five to seven women whose stories really I was able to draw from, and a lot of what they experienced actually ended up informing. And Kat can speak more to this, but I know that it informed how we shaped Eva, because Eva, the person that I played, was not one of the plaintiffs. She's a composite of these different experiences. So some of the dialogue that you hear is really inspired by the experiences that these women shared in No Más Bebé, the documentary. And so even though I didn't meet them, I felt like it was just as powerful hearing their first person account. And, you know, as an actor, it's important to not judge them and to not start from a place of, well, this is me and I'm just going to say these lines and this is how I would have done it, or this is how I would have reacted. So it was so powerful to hear it from them. You know, many of these women, those that are still alive that were part of the case, are, you know, in their 70s now, most of them. And it was, you know, even thinking about it makes me very emotional, because they look like my grandma. They talk like my grandma, you know, they adore themselves like my grandma. And so the pain that they were expressing was so palpable, and it really jumped out of the screen, and it really helped to inform what Eva was going through. And, you know, there was this moment that I shared with Rick Mancia, who played my husband, who was amazing. He played Jorge, where she says, pienso que te debes encontrar otra porque ya no te puedo dar lo que tú quieres. I think you should go and find another woman because I can no longer give you what you want. And the Melinna, me, was judging it for a split second, like, shit, if this was my husband and I had gone through this and he wasn't supporting me, you know, screw this guy. You should be here for me. You shouldn't be blaming this on me. This is systemic. This is institutional. We were the victims of institutional racism and bias that went from implicit to explicit. And that's a very privileged place to come from, right? So there was a woman in the documentary that expressed she felt like she had nothing else to give, and that this beautiful thing that was part of her, this ability to give life, was taken from her. So she felt like she was done. And so it was important for me to not approach telling this story from a cerebral place or a political standpoint, an intellectual standpoint, but to kind of simmer it down and sit with that pain, sit with just the raw emotion, because what that emotion represents is filtered later. And then through the process of healing and Eva, using her own agency, after a few weeks, then she was able to use that pain as a tool for becoming activated and political and joining the community and raising her voice. But at the very beginning, it's just raw. It's just an open wound. Your body has been violated because something was done to it without your approval. So that's a long way to answer your question. No, I didn't talk to them, but I was still able to learn a lot from the survivors who were the Madrigal Ten.
That's amazing. I am honestly blown away, not just by your talent, but that innate type of ability and gift to really transform that experience into something like the way you did. And, coming from a trauma-informed place, which East Los Angeles Women's Center, we're a trauma-informed place, like everything that you just mentioned in terms of healing, you're an advocate, at the core of it all. That's like the soul of advocacy, and how you were able to transform that on screen. That's amazing that you were able to do that as an actor. So thank you for that. And there's a question. We have a couple of questions now from YouTube. This is one question from Maria Elena Yepes. And this is open-ended, but I think maybe Connie or someone that knows this backstory can attest to this. But how did the OBGYN department and services change at General Hospital as a result of the lawsuit? Do we know what changed as a result, even though the Madrigal Ten or the lawsuit wasn't in favor? What are some of the changes that went into effect?
Well, I think, let me say this. I was there from 75 to 81, and I was there when the changes were occurring, even though they lost the lawsuit in 78, was really the development with the Spanish-speaking forms that they were able to, written in Spanish, and sign them, the delayed time about making any decisions and not acting on it. They had 3 days to change their mind. They couldn't just walk in and get the kind of service, for example, for abortions. And so reproductive rights it was just opening up. But I'll tell you, and then it was the format where I think in our department, the social work department was always counted on. This is Women's Hospital, which is only an OBGYN hospital. That's all it served. That was really its specialty area. And so all the clinics were teen clinics, pregnancy clinics, Planned Parenthood clinics, reproductive issues with women. If you were sexually assaulted and you were pregnant, you came into our hospital. You didn't go up on the hill. And that was designed as a part of this to be able to specifically focus on women and their needs. So that's how the task force was developed. That started to address sexual assault in our communities now, the unspoken trauma that was occurring, and to develop a protocol. Protocols began to be developed to address the needs. And there were some of us who were addressing the Spanish-speaking needs of our community and the protocol. And from that is where eventually the East LA Rape Hotline, the first bilingual hotline in the state ever, came about in late 1975, early 1976. But I will say this, and I appreciate listening to the young actors, and everyone involved in this, because it's as real when you watch it now as what people or feeling in the 70s when I watched you portraying the women in there. It brought to face to me listening to my Latina Spanish speaking clients. And I will say this, these women were duped who were sterilized. Our Latina women back in the 70s were strong, were resilient. When these groups started to get organized, they were bringing women and saying, let's go together. You know, they were making choices about whether they wanted to take birth control. They were making choices whether they wanted to bring their husbands or not. And some chose not to. Some chose not to even tell their spouses at the time. They wanted to make the decision about their own body.
Right.
And it was a powerful experience for me being a young graduate out of graduate school who was, orale, you know, women's rights. It was all the marches and Chicano movement, women's rights, you know, let the bra go, whatever we wanted to do, we can do, you know. By the way, I grew up in Lincoln Heights on Workman and Main Street, and I used to walk to the county hospital. So that was Lincoln Heights is my place. So it was amazing to see these women, really, it was in them, but they were duped. They were duped, and they were no longer going to be that way. They were making decisions about who to tell in their family what they were doing, when to sign the document. Well, I'll think about it now. You know, it wasn't like I have to sign right now. So they taught us young social workers who like, orale, they taught us how to be patient, how to listen, how to understand our culture in ways about making decisions, about the value of choosing to have a large family or not and what that meant for them. And women were actually, I'll pick you up and bring you to the next meeting. I'll do this for you. And they did it. I felt like I was just a facilitator at the time, really learning more and more about what that really meant. And so, you know, you come out of school and you think theory and yeah, all right, sign of the times, we're going to do this. This was real hitting the ground, you know. And unfortunately, at that time, right after all this, women's hospital staff started to respond with task force protocols and things like that. But I will say this, the hierarchy of the medical profession of men at the time in the 70s, male doctors. Mm-hmm. And if you thought you had a voice and a social worker go say this, and then you're standing there all white, right? They had the say. They had the say. I mean, that was the way it is. And that is the old boy hierarchy medical institution, which is still seems to me pretty much like it. Thank God. Much more women are doctors now, but these institutions are run on this model. And that was my experience, you know. Right. Okay, I'll stop.
I think you're bringing up so many interesting points, and I appreciate your perspective so much because you were there, and we can only learn about it, but your firsthand experience is so valuable. It's really immeasurable. But you bring up the word choice. And I think that ultimately, really, that's what it's about, right? When we talk about choice, we have to expand the conversation. And it's not just about abortion or access to birth control and family planning services, but what do I do with my body? And whatever I want to do with my body is up to me. And so it's kind of like these compounding oppressions, these compounding institutional inequities. So, all of that was wrought on the bodies of brown, indigenous, Black, Latina, BIPOC women. So I think you know, I think that we're going back to your question, Heidi. Correct me if I'm wrong. You brought something up about the changes that were made after the Madrigal Ten verdict, and even though they, you know, technically lost the case, they did bring that case helped to usher in certain institutional changes. One of them was having access to certain medical forms in Spanish, which is absolutely important. It's imperative. However, we know that throughout history, in the United States, Black women, Puerto Rican women, Native American women have also dealt with sterilization because of racist eugenics, and those populations as a whole have dealt with medical experimentation. And we got to call a spade, especially at this moment of racial reckoning. We have to be honest, and we have to be unafraid to speak truth to power and to use these words. This happened because of racism. This happened because of white supremacy. This would not have been exerted on the bodies of white women. And we have to be very specific about that. So absolutely, one layer of it is that the majority of the women who happened to be Latina were primarily Spanish speaking. And if they were bilingual, Spanish was their first language. But even, based on what I learned from the documentary, some of them did speak English. And I don't know how many of them learned English and felt more comfortable in English throughout the years. And then by the time they were elders, they were fully bilingual. I don't know that. But I can say that we know that this happened to our African-American sisters, and they did speak English, and they do speak English. So it has to do with racism as well. And I think that, it's important for me, anytime I jump into acting work, actors, we have to get paid. We got to get our insurance too, because we don't have universal health care in this country. So but I am most proud of my work when I can do something that affects change and that is connected to current social political movements. And so I think it's really important to connect this still, and it's so relevant to this moment in time, and looking at the disparities that still exist in the medical system when it comes to race. And we can talk about this for hours, but you take someone like Serena Williams, like she's ridiculously affluent. I'm sure probably more affluent than any of us on this panel. I don't know who's watching us right now. But she's someone who had to deal with medical racism. And so I think that I can only hope that this continues that conversation, and it sparks questions.
Definitely. And this is why this film is so powerful. And Kathryn and Chuey, as the executive producer and the writer and filmmaker here, a lot of people are asking on the chat, what's the future of the film? How can people see this film again, or will it be shown in other places? What's the future? How can we reshare and get the story out there?
Go, Kat.
Yeah.
We're working on it. We're working on it. We actually have a pretty big announcement pretty soon about the film. Some exciting things happening with this project. So we will, I don't know, hopefully we'll be having more screenings, but the movie will be available to see for everyone soon. I can't really get into it, but it's exciting. And trust me, we will let all of you know when this is available. And, Kat, myself, and Ash, we're figuring out a long form version of this film, writing the script now and getting our ducks in order to really tell this story and to really tell the full story and shed more light on this story. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, we will be playing in Urban World Film Festival, which will be happening in late September. And so, and just as we've been working on this longer form version of this film, I was able to get the transcripts from the court case, and it's been so interesting reading through what the court case was like. And they interviewed a doctor, a doctor from New York, and just hearing him talk about medical field and that the fact that 95% of OBGYN doctors at the time were male, and that the first surgery that was that they did to practice was sterilization surgeries. And so just kind of those little bits and pieces of knowledge have been really interesting to discover. And I also found out that there was one judge who created who passed the ruling that there was like a 72-hour wait period, and that the languages or the documents would be in Spanish. And then that judge passed away, and then a new judge who had been appointed by Nixon and had different political biases was the one who made the ruling against the women in favor of the hospital. So yeah, just as both of you talk about, like the systemic racism that's evident in this piece, it's like the facts are all there, and reading the actual transcript from the court case as well.
Wow. I think that actually leads me to. No.
I'm so sorry. I was just gonna say, like, I feel this case should be reopened. I think these women deserve justice. I would really like to see these women get justice and get what they deserve. You know, this case needs to be reopened, and that's just my opinion. You know, I think these crimes, these atrocities that were committed to these amazing women, just people need to answer. Things need to be resolved. So personally, I would like to see that. So.
Ditto. Yeah. And so did this other users and other guests are also asking, was there any kind of justice served, maybe like on a local level, maybe not federal court, but on a local level or anything like that? Is that known? How were these women served any justice at all?
Right. I believe they tried to reopen the case in 2005, and
right.
No justice was served again. So
okay. Well, you know, something that does give us hope for the future is we have a viewer, actually, shout out to Dr. Brian Nguyen. He's on the OBGYN team at USC, and he is ensuring us in the comments, and I'm going to read the comment for those of you who haven't. I'm quoting Dr. Nguyen. I'm an OBGYN at LA County USC. I'm an assistant director for the family planning training program aimed at ensuring women's reproductive autonomy is part of all future MD education. Our new generation of providers are very aware of this history and work clinically with respect and responsibility to this history and community. So thank you so much for that comment, Dr. Nguyen. And I wish we would have known you before so you could have been on this panel, but maybe next time. We will be in touch. If you're interested in knowing, make sure you can also follow him at USC Family Planning. And he said he's also interested in sharing this film with the team there. So,
yeah, you can help us set up a screening.
I'm sorry?
Dr. Nguyen, if you're still watching, you can help us set up a screening with LAC USC.
Yeah, Dr. Nguyen. I'm waiting for a comment. He didn't say anything. I'm on live, so like.
But it's great that I think it's great that they're teaching this and sharing this story with the students. You know, being from East LA, thank God for, you know, the women in my family for putting me onto the game and educating me about this topic. A lot of people don't know this story. So, and a lot of people that have seen the film tell me like, yo, Chewie, I didn't know that even happened, bro. I'm like, yeah, that happened. Like this, I would have rather have learned this in high school than Christopher Columbus. You know what I'm saying? Like this needs to be in the curriculum, whether it's LA County, East LA schools, Garfield High School, Roosevelt, it just needs to be in there somewhere, and kids need to learn this.
Definitely.
That's just my 2 cents.
And you know, it has its pluses and minuses, but Instagram is it's a powerful site. So you can follow the film. Please make sure to follow the film and support the film on Instagram, on Twitter. You can do social media posts. Tag East LA Women's Clinic. Tag For Rosa Film. tag Kathryn Boyd-Batstone, tag Chewie Martinez, tag Melinna Bobadilla, because, you know, if it's all part of one greater movement to bring equity and justice. So we want more Latinx representation. We want more brown faces on screen. We also want justice in medicine. We just want to eradicate racism. So there's many paths to do that. But you can start by following us all on Instagram.
Yes, thank you for that plug. Yes, thank you. Tag us and follow all the work that everyone on this panel is doing. And last comment here from one of our viewers. Shout out to Leticia Naranjo. She says that this film has definitely empowered her and motivated her as a nurse to do what it is she does to help the community. So thank you for that. Cheers. And so thank you all, each and every one of you, for your time, for being here. And I know I wish you all the best in all the future endeavors. I can't wait to hear what those exciting news are. And hopefully a lot of other fruitful conversations come from this, like with Dr. Nguyen and other departments. I know there's a lot of people who are interested in screening this film in their communities as well. So thank you for that. And with that, everyone that joined us today will be part of a raffle. So we're gonna do that because we're running short on time. So we have already pre-selected the winners on a very special website called Random Picker. So this is completely fair raffle for everyone that RSVP'd, and today we're grateful for Capullo Café. It's a local women-owned business in Boyle Heights, and they sponsored a gift basket with a gift card, a journal, and other self-care items. And special thanks to the co-founder of Capullo Café, who's also our board member. So thank you, Beatrice, if you're out there, thank you. And so drum roll, please. The winner for today's raffle is Carrie Nedro. Are you on?
Hey!
Are you on, Carrie?
You want some cafecito? You want some cafecito? She wants some cafecito.
Is she on? I'm going to look at the comments if you're on. If you're not on, we're going to give your raffle to someone else. I'm going to give it 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we have another winner because I thought maybe this would happen. So our winner is Maria Elena Yepes. Are you on? Woohoo! I thought I saw you on here somewhere.
You want some café con leche? Concha? What's up?
And if she's not on, then we'll just
we get
figure it out.
Yeah, we should get it.
Yeah, you guys will get it. You guys will get it.
I cried a lot. Okay, you all watched me cry for 20 minutes.
Right, man. From beginning to end. Llorando. Oh, she's there.
Is she there? There she is, Maria Elena Yepes. Yay! Hey. Thank you for participating and joining us. And you're gonna get. We'll be in touch. We'll be in touch. And for everyone, yay! There she is. Oh, thank you.
I want some coffee. I just want coffee, Mom. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And for everyone else that joined us today, and you're interested in, if you're moved to make a difference, please do so. The only thing you have to do the first step to making a difference is caring. And I think that with images and with historic references like we learned today, it leads us to care. So if you're interested, follow our social media channels. Like you said, follow all of our panelists at Chewie Martinez, at Kathryn Boyd-Batstone, Melinna Bobadilla, Connie Destito. I don't know if you're on social media, but what's the best place? And Twitter.
I got that.
We gotta start you at Twitter. We gotta start you at IG, Connie. We got you.
I'm on. I love all that stuff.
Oh, we're gonna hook you up. We're gonna get a picture. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
Got it.
Perfect.
love it.
Make sure to share our free and confidential 24/7 rape crisis hotline. Well, what was the rape crisis hotline now is our hotline. We're still on. Our number is 800-585-6231. For any of your friends, community, anyone who may need it, we're there 24/7. And stay tuned. Visit our website, www.elawc.org. Follow us on the socials. We have our 23rd annual Mujeres de Paz Vigil taking place virtually this year, but it's going to be an exciting program. And we also have our Luna Fest, which is our annual film fundraiser that you'll also, if you enjoyed today, then you'll surely also enjoy Luna Fest coming up, and that will be on September 24th. And one last thing, if you are interested in making a difference through advocacy or education, please follow up with me or visit our website on how you can be an embajadora de paz, an ambassador of peace, where you can share skills, resources, expertise, and help us develop future events and campaigns like this for others to become aware. So thank you again for making this a memorable experience. And first and foremost, thank you for Paulo of Intangible Productions. All of this tech magic would not have been possible without him. So thank you, Paulo. And with that, I leave you all. Barbara, you don't see her anymore. I don't think she's on, but thank you so much, Barbara. Barbara is the one who spearheaded all of this, and she's the one that also has these amazing goals and visions for our center. So thank you for continuing the legacy of East Los Angeles Women's Center, and our work here continues, especially with COVID. So let us know how you can help or how we can help you. And thank you all again. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Bye.